Good afternoon. We are here for the Q&A session following the screening of Oz Kids. We're with director Kim Snyder and with Doc Edge's Matthew Donaldson, who will be conducting the Q&A. Just before we kick off, I'm going to play a short reel, which will allow people the time to find their way from the screening and through to us. So enjoy this for a couple of minutes or so, and then we'll crack into it.
Kia ora koutou katoa and welcome to this year's Documentary Edge Festival, Life Unscripted.
This year, the Doc Edge Festival is celebrating 15 years of promoting and supporting the filmmakers that open our eyes to what is happening around us, both nationally and internationally.
For many of us, life has never felt so unscripted, but I have been so heartened by the huge spirit shown by New Zealanders in the face of COVID-19.
Because of COVID-19, this year Doc Edge is online.
Over the next 24 days, we can look forward to 83 of the world's best documentary feature films and shorts, including many from our own superb documentary makers here in Aotearoa, New Zealand.
83 films, 57 documentaries and 26 short films.
The entire country can now join us online.
And that just goes to show how important it is in the post-COVID world to be agile and to react quickly, to reimagine and rework the way we do things.
The fact that Doc Edge has been able to so nimbly respond and create a first-of-its-kind online experience speaks to the innovation, the commitment and the grit of our creative sector.
So hats off to the Doc Edge team. They've been courageous, proactive and flexible, and they've managed to draw together an amazing array of the very best documentaries from throughout the world and here in New Zealand for you to enjoy from the comfort of your own home.
I'm a strong believer in the products of our arts and culture sector being accessible to all of our communities, so it's great to see that this year's festival has a suite of free films and educational documentaries from New Zealand and the Pacific for everyone to enjoy from the comfort of their couch.
And if you happen to be a school teacher, make the most of those wonderful schools programs, and hopefully you will inspire a whole new generation of documentary watchers.
I really value the role and that documentaries play in our lives. They connect us, they inform us, and hold a mirror to the issues of our time.
I want to say a big thank you to the organisers of the festival.
I'd also like to acknowledge all filmmakers for their hard work. A lot of effort has gone into filming and producing these documentaries, so it's fantastic that your work will still get to be seen and enjoyed by so many people.
It's never been more relevant for stories of the world to be shared. And I wish Doc Edge and all its supporters a very successful festival.
Please enjoy the 2020 Doc Edge Film Festival.
Right, and we're back. So if your mics are muted, then now's good to open them up again. I'm going to say the thank yous and then I'm going to clear off and let this conversation get going. So we are, as you are well aware, a film festival, and like film festivals around the world, we need the support of our partners to be able to bring the many wonderful films to you that we have been doing for about 2.5 weeks now. And among those partners are Chorus, RNZ and Ray Foundation, who've been key partners for us this year and really supported us very well. So we're enormously grateful to them. We are on Facebook, so you're aware that we're online this year, and we brought on some tech partners as well to help us jump over those hurdles and get through the fairly steep learning curve that we went through having made the decision to do this in this way. And they are Event Finder, who've done our ticketing, Department of Post, which preps all the film files so that they will screen and look wonderful in the various online environments that they're playing. And also Shift 72, which does a wonderful job in delivering online film festivals and is rapidly becoming a leader in that business around the world. So thank you to all of those for their support. And now I'm going to hand over to Matthew. Matthew will talk with Kim. If you're watching us on Facebook immediately after the screening, do feel free to put comments or questions into the comments there, and we will feed those through so that we can get you some answers. So All yours, Matt.
And I'd like to thank you too, Keith. You've done such an amazing job running and facilitating all of the tech for all of the Q&As for the Dockage Film Festival. It's been a long haul, and we've gotten there. But most importantly, I'd like to thank Kim, who's joining us quite late at night. Thank you, Kim, for such a powerful film. It's incredible, and very, very moving, but also raises some very interesting questions for people outside of the US. It's quite unfamiliar, this sense of a gun culture which can then permeate into schools. Can you give us a bit of a background into what has led to this very strong gun culture and why it's been allowed to affect children so devastatingly?
Wow. Well, I don't know if I can still grasp in any way why exactly our gun culture came to be what it is today. Is perplexing to me, even as an American. But I can tell you that sitting in these times now, since we made the film, with all that's going on, the gun issue for me as a human being, as an American, as a filmmaker, has become just even more paramount. We've got, COVID going on, and we've got arms sales escalating at a time when people are out of work, they're depressed, and 2/3 of our shameful 40,000 deaths a year by guns are suicides. So, it's just on top of everything else, I really fear that right now is a time where if you didn't care about it before, between suicide, rises in domestic violence, what we all saw happen, what's happening with Black Lives Matters and Black and brown communities, suffering from gun violence every day, it's just dire. But I don't know that I answered the question of how it came to be. I still am in shock in watching, I'm in shock in watching in our country people with AR-15s who, with their freedom of expression right, or their Second Amendment rights, can carry those guns because they don't want to wear masks to protect us from dying from a deadly virus. And yet you have thousands and hundreds of thousands of people peacefully protesting who wouldn't dare come with their, even if they legally have an AR-15. So it's crazy.
One of the most recent affecting and disturbing images that I've seen with regards to American gun culture and the Black Lives Matter movement with the two wealthy middle-aged white people. One had a semi-automatic, it looked like, one like an AR-15, and the woman had a pistol, and they had them pointed at people because there seemed to be a real climate of fear that they were going to have their private property or their rights infringed or something. Like, do you think that there's a way back from the point that the US is at the moment with its attitude towards gun culture and its love for guns? I mean, you mentioned the Second Amendment is that it's the right to bear arms, isn't it?
Yes, it is.
Do you think that has entrenched itself as the founding fathers envisioned, or that it has taken some wild mutant tangent that's really negatively affecting American society?
I think some of the ugly truth has come out that, I always have dumped to understand it because I didn't grow up around gun culture. So I don't understand it more than a lot of people looking in on our country do. But, I've come to understand better why certain people feel they want and need guns. There are people who hunt. There are people who do it for sport. I think what's scary in the context of today is how many people have guns because they fear a time when they will have to have some kind of uprising. And that that's really scary given what's happening in our streets. And so I don't, on the other hand, the film is the one thing that gave me hope, making it, being around youth who are, I do have hope in that, because I think, there's that funny moment at the end where Emma says, someone says, can you sustain this journalist? And she says, oh yeah, we're going to live a lot longer. We have a lot of time. And it's kind of true of a lot of things, right? So even with more conservative youth in America, I see more of a dialogue around it. So I'm somewhat hopeful. It's hard to have hope about a lot of things, but I think that's the point of the movie, is it's a coming of age story about an age that we all, for people who are that age, and I hope there are some people closer to that age who watch it. I know a lot have here. For those of us who are older, for me, it just puts me in touch with that person that I was at 17, and remembering that hope is inherent in that age, even though they're living in the most nihilistic generational time I can imagine. So I just look at them and my heart goes out, because I do think it's a story of courage.
I was just going to say, like, the courage literally under fire, and the courage also to speak out, and the courage to remain coherent and articulate under such emotionally disturbing times, especially for young people. Like, how do we support young people who and it seems like the youth is almost being taken from them. They've become more adult than the adults, and there's this unfortunate feeling that they've had to grow up so quickly to deal with these issues because adults aren't. How do you think that we can support young people to articulate these issues to power, but also help them recapture some of that lost youth?
Yeah, I'm thinking about that a lot these days. And well, first of all, more specifically, we're working with the film, which will be released sometime in the month before our general election. We're working with the youth movement to utilize the film to try to turn the youth vote out. So you can, follow what we're doing with that campaign through Us Kids, our website. I think it's uskidsfilm.com. And also, we're working very hand in hand with March for Our Lives, the organization. They're doing some amazing things with a program called Our Power right now. They're doing a virtual, well, nobody knows what's virtual and what's not going to be virtual come September and October, but either way, some kind of a tour of 9 strategic states. So you can follow those activities. But I've been thinking a lot about, obviously thinking a lot about Black Lives Matters and just such an important moment in the country. But these conversations and these dialogues that we're talking about, but thinking about how they need to happen in terms of age and intergenerationally, and how it's really just about respect. How I felt in making this film, that it was really important to see, for them to understand that I saw them as human beings that were younger than me, but, just chronologically, I've been here longer, but they've been here and grown up in a time that's different than when I did. So they have knowledge I don't have. Mm-hmm. And that sharing of experience versus things that, not just things they've experienced, but I think the way that their brains are wired differently because of growing up on the internet is there's just I think that's one way, is to stand with them. I think when Emma in the movie says, these people come up and say, oh, you're so brave. And there was so much almost fetishizing and like, you go and like you, and they're like, we need all of us. It's not about, go kids, go and save the world. We need to get off our asses and really take their lead. And it's not the first time. I mean, obviously, so many great movements have been born out of that age group. There's more energy. There's nothing to lose. You're not jaded in the same way. So that's really, I think, what the film is also trying to get at.
And I think you made a good point just then, but also through the movie, is that there's a new environment of the internet as well. They have social media, they're wielding social media like some kind of magic and reaching more people than ever before in a very immediate way. Do you think that social media will actually enact some change, or be the conduit to some change that previously hasn't existed, and that we might actually see some positive movement to reform of these gun laws?
I do have a lot of hope. I mean, that was part of what, that was, maybe it's the timeline isn't as apparent, but it really was 3 weeks that they got together the wherewithal to get the largest youth movement since the Vietnam War to assemble in Washington, as well as sister marches all over the globe. 3 weeks through social media. I mean, we know what happened with Arab Spring. That was instigated through a social media phenomenon. So we do know what can happen. And, that's the line in the movie where Cameron said it was like the world was a video game. We had the codes. And I think that's part of the fascinating thing I watched, is they were just kids who in the beginning were just focused. They were just in trauma and angry and lost their friends and wanted to do something about it, didn't want to get famous, didn't ask for any of that, and just sort of went forward. And then the media, it's not even to criticize them, the traditional media kind of seized on them, and they suddenly were like, wait a minute. I mean, I think a lot of that generation and beyond is just very cynical of the way our media works. And so it started to go that way, where of course they wanted the microphone. And then they said, wait a minute, now our narrative isn't ours exactly. We want to take it back. And so, their ability to sort of say, we actually don't need you anymore so much. We can do this. We have the superpower. So that's what I love and I do think that, unfortunately, our president has also understood the power of Twitter. But it's hopefully it can be used. They can use it to do great things in these coming months that are so critical.
Yeah, and like you say, with the mainstream media, the old media is getting in the Shark Tank, and you start to feel the nibbles on the toes. You want to get out as soon as you can. And I mean, one aspect of the movie which really struck home to me, I've been involved in some social justice movements before, and it's very easy to feel burnt out. It's very easy to feel like you're not achieving anything, and especially for young people who haven't had that hardened, haven't suffered a defeat and come back again to rise again successfully. They were right in the middle of the Shark Tank, right in the frying pan and in the fire, and they had to adjust really quickly, and the self-care element really came through. Has there been any follow-up on how they're doing now, like being so brave and putting themselves out there, to then the sudden shock of being out of the limelight and having to cope with the repercussions of what they tried to do?
They're fired up again. I think the gravity of our situation, I think it did take them a minute to say, wait a second, we are kids that need lives, that need higher educations. Some of us want to choose to do that. But Emma really wanted to be regular, so to speak. Fame was something that was weird actually for her, as you could see in the movie. And so now they're fired up, and Black Lives Matter, they always understood that intersectionality. Hopefully that comes across. We're working closely with Bria, who had done so much in her hometown of Milwaukee. She's just about to lead like a 40-mile march with, so they're all doing things together and separately. And I think they're gearing up, that, you know, they've sort of restored themselves and understand that this is a moment in history. David has never wavered for a second. He's just like keeps going. So yeah, I think they're, if you follow them, they're in the game.
Well, good. As long as they're supported and they feel they're supported. We have a excuse me. We have a question from the audience. This isn't the first film you've made about school shootings. Have you seen any significant developments in the stories or the responses since Newtown and Notes from Dunblane?
Yeah, a great question, and thanks for whoever is tracking the trajectory of my filmmaking in these past years. I didn't intend to sort of have such a large amount of time dedicated to, and they're not school shootings per se, but I think it's the terrain of trauma and the travesty of, yes, the gun issue too. But psychologically, there's so much in it that to unpack. And I think one of the things people say, nothing happened after Newtown. If the death of 20 first graders didn't change something. I mean, you guys changed stuff in the week. I remember, just as a tangent, being with our kids in Washington, doing this. There's a shots of it in the movie. They do this art installation. It's a year anniversary, and it was, I think, the week after your tragic shooting, and we were just like, it's that easy. You can just, I mean, what strength, what courage your prime minister had to just said, this is what we're doing. And anyhow, I think the promising thing since Newtown is that the messengers have gotten more varied and stronger. So after Newtown, we saw a lot more doctors. We worked with a lot of emergency workers saying, 10 years ago, we couldn't talk about this as doctors. But you know, we're on the front lines. This is a public health crisis. We see like an average of 9 kids a day dying. You saw doctors, you saw teachers stepping up. You saw clergy in the case of the short we did, Notes from Dunblane. And you saw, and now more and more law enforcement. You see a lot of sheriffs speaking out and saying, you know, we don't want this either. We don't want this arms race. And then of course the youth was like waiting. I was sort of waiting for that moment, and all of, you know, and that was really interesting because a lot of the kids who survived Newtown, who had significant PTSD, were first graders, third graders. You know, I'm close with Natalie Barden, who lost her little brother when she was in 3rd grade. And she's become a very powerful voice, and now is about to enter college. But I think there was this my own desire to sort of follow us kids was because I also saw a nation of traumatized kids, and what, you know, and people not really looking at the cost of that to our society. You've got all these kids that are scared and mad, and, you know, no one's protecting us. And I always had this image when I was making the film of, I don't know, I had this image of like teenagers in a house with parents that are fighting and divorcing, and they're also alcoholics, and they're just sort of sick of it. And then one day they're in the back seat, they're not old enough to drive maybe, but they realize the parents are drunk and they're going to kill them. You know? And they're just like, I have to take the wheel. Like I have to do this now. And it felt like that. It felt like this sort of just looking around, like, what are people not understanding about this? So that's sort of how I channeled it, that rage and that incredulity that we just have. And I feel that way right now about, you know, what we're doing in response to the virus. It's just, you know, look at your infection rate. Like, what is it? Like 0. You know?
We're managing the cases coming back in of returning New Zealanders, but yeah, it's all monitored at the border and so on. Yeah, I mean,
I keep thinking there's a total parallel between the same, what could you not understand about this? And it comes down to a selfishness. It comes down to some kind of, getting back to your original question, some kind of, warped, bastardized image of version of a value that at one time was an interesting American value of individualism and new frontier, and it was a young country, and somehow that's translated in these times and with these challenges into just utter selfishness of not understanding that we are one, and this virus is so, it couldn't be clearer. And I think the gun issue has a similarity, because when I made Newtown, one of the fathers I was close to, who's in the movie, got up and testified and just said, your right to own an assault style weapon, does not trump the right of my son to his life. Mm. And it's the same thing. Your right to say, I don't want to wear a mask, does not trump the idea of community spread. It's almost the same thing. Like, I want to have the right to do this. You can't tell me, big brother. You can't tell me not to. And yet 40,000 lives are lost. So it's just, it's a maddening thing. And, I think secretly there's a whole bunch of us who are really trying to figure out how to get there, how to get down to where you are. And you're right not to open your borders, but we want the secret passage.
Well, yeah, I mean, I'd love to open the borders to people who are sympathetic to the way that we do things, but it's for the moment we can only extend our hope that things will settle down for everyone in America soon.
Thank you.
What are your thoughts on the pathways to that? Not only with regards to COVID, not only with regards to Black Lives Matter, but this particular issue here with the young people having to march for their lives.
Our hope. We have a president that is fully embracing. The NRA, gun culture, white supremacists. It's like, the hope is that needs to go away in November. I don't really know what more to say, except that we've never lived through anything like this. And for young people, I think that translates into, it's so dire that we need to turn out that youth vote, because in the midterms, as you saw in the film, they really made a difference. I mean, they are truly responsible for changing the face of at least our House of Representatives. So, even if it's down ballot, there's a lot of local races that are just essential. I mean, it can also translate in all kinds of other ways in local communities, especially now in our country where there's a void, where the central government isn't taking charge of these issues, really. So it's coming down, that's, I think, in some ways a hopeful thing, that you've never seen governors and mayors in our country have more visibility, and for people to understand, like, my life actually is in the hand of this woman or man making this policy around, what we're doing with the virus, what guns can be here. I mean, there are national laws that are protected, but so much is happening that is almost like federalism, that we're just so utterly different in different parts of the country. So I think it's about getting people to vote down ballot and think about locally what's happening in their community and how they can make a difference. civic engagement. And the other encouraging thing is I'm looking at the poster, the image from our film. There's this little kid, Langston, with the blonde hair from Sioux City, Iowa. I love Langston. And Langston's like, 10, and he's out there, I can't vote yet, but I speak on behalf of, candidates that support this and, gun reform and this and that. So I feel like there's a whole generation that is so inspired, and these kids are role models to them. They're not just looking to get up and get on a TV show and sing now. They really want to be a generation that turned something around. So that encourages me a lot.
Yeah, planting seeds, you grow a field.
That's right. That's right.
We have another question from the audience. How does making these powerful films on difficult subjects affect you personally?
Yeah, that's a tough one. I have to admit, after 6 years of being in this terrain, it's definitely taken its toll. You get burnout, you get some secondary trauma, takes its toll on personal relationships, either not enough time for them or just not being everything you want to be in that personal part of life. So I think right now with the quarantine, I have been taking a tiny pause just to kind of regroup and take the lead from the kids too, because they also really were very big on, you gotta, self-care. So it's, it's like everything else, it's about balance, but it is hard. I think that, I think I need to balance. I think what's great about this film, Us Kids, is there's, Newtown was this gut punch. It was like this, it was a treatise on grief. But this is, there's feistiness, there's, rage and anger is something that is putting me back in touch, as I said, with my teenage self. And there's a lot of that is, a different kind of a feeling that is, and I'm close with a lot of these kids. I mean, I really consider them friends. Hopefully they look to me to be a bit of a friend and a mentor at times. But, when I feel down, there's nobody who makes me feel better than picking up the phone and talking to one of them. It really does just lift me up. And because the conversations are so inspiring and, not defeatist. And I think, as I said, that's just sort of the nature of that age. So, some adults don't love that age, but I do.
Well, speaking of inspiration, you've inspired a whole new audience here in New Zealand, and even though we don't necessarily have the same kind of problems here, we're more aware of the problems there, so we will give support wherever we can. And our best hopes for more widespread distribution, and how you manage to affect a whole new audience and a whole new generation for really continuing to affect change in the world. So Kim, thank you very much for joining us here.
Thank you, Matt, and thank the festival. It's a fantastic festival, and I'm so sad that I couldn't physically be there. That I was planning on it, and it was all in the works. I was finally going to get to New Zealand next film.
We'll get you over next time for sure. Thank you so much, Kim.
Yeah, thank you to both of you. I've just posted into the Facebook comments links to an article on Bloomberg, which is titled "An Analysis of 749 Mass Shootings Over the Past 6 Years," which is pretty horrifying numbers in themselves. But for those of you interested in the topic, well worth a read. I'm also posting there the link to the website for the film, which contains links to social media around the campaign issues raised. So again, thank you, Kim, for joining us. And
thank you so much.
And thank you for Matt for taking us through it. Big red button time. So it's time to say cheerio. So give us a smile and a wave, and we will end on that. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.